Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TrialSite News Podcast Farrago. I am Erin, your host. Thank you for joining in. And joining us today is Lou Weisbach, and he is a philanthropist, entrepreneur. I will let him tell you more about himself. And he wants to completely change how we are tackling disease in this country. So, Lou, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Erin, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure meeting you and being on your show, to be sure. So the simplest way that I would suggest to you to look at what we're trying to do is to understand that when it comes to preventing and or treating diseases, we don't have the 5 pillars of success that you need to get anything done. And the 5 pillars of success are having enough money, having seasoned leadership that's proven that they can achieve remarkable things, having accountability, having an appropriate business model, and having a sense of urgency. That doesn't exist in the quest for cures or in the world of preventing disease. And so we sat down with a blank sheet of paper one day and said, if that was our only goal, how would we go about it? And we realized that if we put something together that had all of those 5 elements, no different than what Apple did in 1990, if they didn't have those 5 elements, instead of having an iPhone today, you'd be using a rotary dial phone. And so anybody who's experienced in business knows that if you don't build your enterprise the right way, your chances of succeeding are negligible. And that's what we've done relative to the American Center for Cures and relative to the model that we put together.
Okay, so the American Center for Cures, ACC, I guess it already has an acronym, or I just gave it one. And there was just an opinion piece posted about it on TrialSite News that the founder, Daniel O'Connor, wrote. But can you kind of dive into a little bit more of the specifics about what that is and what that means for Americans?
Yeah, so again, we knew that we had to have the 5 pillars of success in order to be successful, and we've never had that in the world of prevention and curing diseases. So what it means specifically is the following. We're going to have a bill in Congress. We're going to be meeting with the president shortly. And the bill will be to approve a $750 billion funding through the sale of bonds over a 6-year period, $125 billion a year for 6 years. And with that money, we're going to be setting up 16 separate organizations, 14 whose job is going to be with a $36 billion budget each to prevent and or cure Alzheimer's, for example, Parkinson's, pancreatic cancer, heart disease, mental illness, diabetes. 14 separate groups with a CEO who's a proven leader, who's proven his or her ability to cross the finish line and achieve remarkable goals. So that's 14 entities with $36 billion of funding each. Then a 15th entity will be what we call the catch-all. It'll be the entity that is charged with preventing and or curing all the other diseases, including diseases that are really not well known, that wouldn't come to your mind typically, which are in the classification of orphan diseases. Sure. And then the 16th unit is going to also have $108 billion. And that unit is going to be totally funding for AI and data. And that group is going to be working with the other 15 entities on the data and AI side. And if you think about it this way, all the great research work that's been done, not only in the United States, but in the world over the last 30 or 40 years, and we ultimately haven't gotten the job done. And we haven't gotten the job done not because we don't have brilliant researchers or scientists, but because we plugged them into a system that could never work. It was never business-like. It never didn't have the 5 pillars of success. So now, once and for all, we're going to make that happen, and we're going to, around the single issue, that's the exact same for every American, rich or poor, black or white, Democrat or Republican. Disease is that single issue. It's 100% issue. It's an issue, Aaron, you and I have just met. It's the same issue for you as it is for me, as for your friends, as for the people running for mayor of New York. Exact same issue for everybody. So it's the type of issue that we believe will unite America and around making America healthy. I wouldn't even say making America healthy again. I would say making America healthy. We haven't dealt with disease in a business-like manner before, but the time has come and everything's aligning to be able to make that happen now.
It's funny you said again, when I hear that, I'm always like, when are we going back to? Like what era? But I think it's good. No, I think it's all, I think there's a great enthusiasm right now to try to, tackle chronic diseases and some of these things. Can you clarify those? So do you think what we're doing now is wrong because of the way the business model is set up, the system is set up, or is it that we are trying to tackle symptoms? Do you believe cures are possible and that we are just deliberately not going in that direction and just trying to put band-aids on? Do you see what I'm asking?
I do. I understand what you're asking. So
Okay.
I would say that clearly the methodology that we have relative to trying to prevent people from getting sick and or curing them is a failed methodology. It's in an inappropriate methodology. So we had the Biden moonshot on cures, for example, and I'm certain that it was well-intentioned, but they sprinkled money around. There was no real business plan. People wanted to believe that they were going to be able to cure cancer, but there was no business-like logical approach that we could have ever gotten it done. We run and walk for cures around every disease. You see it on your television every day, whether it's MS or whether it's muscular dystrophy or whether it's breast cancer, and we throw money into a system that has never worked and will never work. And this is basically taking business logic and business principles of what has created any success we've had in America and the world, taking the model of what works and applying it to cures and prevention.
Now, cures are different than prevention, and I'm in public health, so I'm just, what is your take on that? Because when you say we're going to work on cures, I'm thinking, okay, the people are already sick, right? And then,
So,
go ahead.
yeah, no, you make a good point, and it is different. And I would much rather be able to accomplish total prevention than cures. I'd much rather stop people from getting sick in the first place. That would be the best answer of all, but unfortunately, there are a lot of people who it can't be prevented because they're already there. And so we believe that our mission is got to be on both sides of that equation. We want to give hope to the people who already have a disease and know that we have a business approach to once and for all resolve their issues, whether it's pancreatic cancer, whether it's breast cancer, whether it's diabetes. And the other thing that's really interesting about this is the financial elements of it. The only detractors would say, well, $750 billion, that sounds like a lot of money. How do you know it's going to work? And the simple answer to that is that the interest payment in the first year is going to be $6 billion. If the only thing we were successful doing was preventing and curing diabetes, which is probably the most low-hanging fruit in terms of likelihood of success, that would save the federal government this year $750 billion and growing. So if you look at it in a 20-year horizon, because it's growing in cost, we'd probably be saving $20 trillion. And think about all of the conversation we hear all the time about the deficit. So the idea that we could do something that could make every person in America know that we're on a mission to take care of the issues that they and their family have, and that it's businesslike and makes sense, while at the same time, we're not only curing disease, but we're curing the deficit. It's pretty hard to take 100% issue like that and not support it.
Okay, and just to clarify, you're talking about type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, right? Not the type 1, which is lack of insulin, or maybe you're talking about both. But
we're actually talking about both.
Oh, okay.
One of them is deemed to be more quickly curable than the other. Yeah. But we're actually talking about both.
Okay, okay. So in plain language for people, how is the American Center for Cures, how will it be different, practically speaking, than the NIH, which we're all familiar with, or other big research institutions? Is it mostly just this model that you're going to apply?
So, first of all, the NIH, who has done great work, but preventing and curing disease is not what they do. It's not their strong point. They've done a lot of wonderful things. So this is complementary to the NIH. We think the NIH is important. It's important to keep in place, but we believe that every American deserves the knowledge that we're doing everything we can to prevent them from getting sick and curing them. But again, the NIH's budget last year was 40+ billion. We're talking about $750 billion. We're talking about bringing in the best and brightest with a mission, with a business plan, with the appropriate leaders who know how to get things done. This is the Manhattan Project with much more money, with a much greater opportunity to succeed, and especially because of AI. All the accumulated research and knowledge, and then you combine it with AI, and you combine it with enough money to cross the finish line, and it's exciting. And I will tell you that when President Trump cut a lot of the research budgets, and I don't know what his intentions were. Obviously, he had good intentions for whatever he was trying to do, but that opened the floodgates for our success, because it got the research industry to realize that they needed to be part of something that was much more accountable, that had a better business model, a better plan, a better opportunity to be truly successful on behalf of all people. And that's opened up the floodgates for us relative, and the groundswell of interest relative to what we're doing.
Interesting. I didn't think of that, but it makes sense. So you propose raising $750 billion through Treasury-backed bonds. Now, can you guarantee that that will work out in the taxpayers' favor? Because no one wants to pay more in taxes, and it just sounds like a big number.
Well, we're not asking anybody to pay more in taxes. Mm-hmm. The government would be responsible. We're talking about $6 billion in interest in the first year. That's a negligible number. That's not requiring more taxes from anybody. We'll think about that. We're just taking a fraction of the cuts that the NIH had in the first year, with the possibility of saving the taxpayer a boatload of money. But even more importantly, yes, ultimately we're going to save money, we're going to reduce the deficit, but more importantly, everybody in this country is going to know that America is the leader in prevention and cures. And wouldn't we like America's brand to be that we're the exporter of good health? And you can just hear President Trump talking right now about, and I do believe he might be the only president in our lifetime that would do something like this, because the president doesn't know boundaries. The things that he's pushing through are, in his view, about common sense and about doing the right thing for the country and not worrying about what other people think. You know, whether it's the tariffs, whether it's the border, whether it's Iran, he's willing to cross lines that we haven't been willing to in the past. But the beauty of this is 100% issue. All the other issues, there are people on both sides of the issue. If we're talking about guns, if we're talking about every other issue in this country, disease is 100% issue. So knowing who President Trump is, he'll understand that and he'll recognize that. And this financially is so viable as well. The question isn't whether we should do it, but how can we not do it? And to the question you asked me before is how can you guarantee success? What I can guarantee you is that the likelihood of success relative to what we've done in the past, it is going to be dramatically higher because we've put together what you need to be successful. What we've done in the past has not had the elements that you would need to be successful. And that's why, since you were born, and you're a lot younger than I am, you've watched on the news, whether it's ABC, CBS, NBC, almost every night how close we are to a cure for something. I think you would acknowledge that you've seen those broadcasts. What has come to fruition? And it hasn't not come to fruition because we don't have good researchers working. It doesn't come to fruition because we don't have the proper business model to accommodate success.
All right, so let's talk about political support. You said you have support across the aisle. Do you think now's the time with the bipartisan traction, like you're going to get this done?
Well, first of all, the political world has changed. So when I was involved with Bill Clinton in government, the landscape has changed. When you were working with Bill Clinton would take something like this on and he'd sit down with people from both parties. He was a great horse trader and he got things done. In the world today, it's become us against you. As we all know, watching the media, the Democrats are ripping the Republicans are ripping the Democrats. What I would say is different about this issue is because this is an issue that you really can't vote against. Because it's a 100% issue, I want to know what Democrat could vote against this and expect to be reelected. I want to know what Republican could vote against it and expect to be reelected. That's the beauty of this. It makes sense. It's businesslike. It ultimately cuts the deficit. It's something that's great for everybody in this country. And again, for America's brand to become the exporter of good health globally would be a wonderful thing, especially today with the way we're viewed in many places around the world.
I agree that, yeah, that would be a wonderful thing. But I think for a lot of Americans, it's just being able to afford healthcare and being able to get access and, knowing that, hey, maybe there will be a cure for this and you won't have to struggle. I mean, right now it's just, people can't afford it, right? Like that's.
So you bring up a good point and I'm glad that you brought it up. The way this is being built is that the cures that we come up with are going to, from a technical point of view, because the American taxpayers, to your point, are essentially paying for this. I mean, the money that's being paid in interest is really coming from the government. The government is really taxpayer money. So in our model, any American taxpayer, rich or poor, black or white, Democrat or Republican, the cures that we come up with, they're going to have entitlement to getting those cures. Because this can't be a methodology to give rich people cures. This has to be a process for all people.
So essentially the cures you discover would be public goods, essentially?
Would become the right of every American to receive. That's correct.
Okay.
Because we're going to be saving so much money on treatment. The federal government's going to be saving so much money on treatment that this can become a very economically sound issue for the government, including giving that to people who have the need for the cures. Okay.
Now, what does the pharmaceutical industry, the drug companies, the lobbyists, what do they say about this, or how are you going to bring them on board? Because they're pretty powerful.
Yeah, so you're 100% right. And let me state first of all that I am not somebody that rips on the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry in America has done remarkable things. If you think about every day in your life, if you're not feeling well, if you're sick, if your family's sick, a friend's sick, your accessibility to the most remarkable drugs over the counter are coming from the pharmaceutical industries in America. So they do that extraordinarily well. I want to make that point. The money in the pharmaceutical business is in treatment, it's not in cures. So we understood that in order for the pharmaceutical industry to be fully supportive of what we're doing, that we had to build something into this that was in their best interest as well. And so what we've done is we're going to be spending $750 billion on research. We're going to come up with all kinds of compounds that aren't preventative and aren't curative, just as you know that in the history of how we've come up with aspirin or Viagra, we come up with things all the time that are unintended consequences to research. We're going to come up with the greatest drugs of the future, and we're going to license them to pharma. And that's going to help pay our interest payments for the American Center for Cures, but it's going to give the pharmaceutical industry the greatest drugs of the future without any developmental costs. And why that's important is important for them to be on our side because we're working collaboratively with them, but we'll also keep the price of those drugs to the public at a much more reasonable price point because they're going to have no developmental costs.
Okay, so those are not the cure-all drugs. Those are the things that you come up with that help out with symptoms here and there.
They're not preventative or curative. So if you think about it this way, if you think about the anti-inflammatory of the future, the best anti-inflammatory of the future, which is not preventative or curative necessarily, but a great product for a pharmaceutical company to sell to the public.
And you define cure as gets rid of the disease completely?
Yes.
Okay.
Ultimately, correct.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. That's our mission. Our mission is to, I'll give you a perfect example. Pancreatic cancer.
Brutal.
One of the former heads of Mayo Clinic called me the other day when he read about what we were doing. And he said, I know you're not going to believe this, and he's no longer at Mayo, but we have found a cure for stage 4 pancreatic cancer, for brain cancer, glioblastoma, for the worst form of breast cancer, but we can't get it through the American government because they want 7 to 12 years of trials. We don't have the money to handle the trials. So the point is that if you have this body, the American Center for Cures, overseeing and having the mission to getting these things done, we put all the pieces together to expedite things. Think about how the COVID vaccine was expedited. Vaccines typically have taken 7 years to develop. This one took 7 months. Now, wouldn't you, if you had a relative that had pancreatic cancer and was dying, and there was a cure out there, potentially, wouldn't you want that process expedited? For sure. Well, that's not what happens today. And in our process, in our model, that would happen. We are going to put all the pieces together, including the clinical trials piece, including taking the reason this is going to be in the private sector is we don't want to have, to President Trump's comments all the time, we don't want to have obstacles. We don't want to have all this red tape that we have to go through all the time. We want to be able to move with the speed of business and the speed of solving problems for the people in America.
Okay, so given what you just said and the time frame, and I totally understand getting things to the market faster and allowing people to try certain things. And certainly if you had a disease like pancreatic cancer, you'd want to try something because the outcome of that is not very good. But how can you assure people like, hey, you're going through all the steps because the length of the trials is, and even like the long-term data comes in, right? People are also kind of nervous about side effects. And that's kind of why, right? Like we have the red tape there too.
So what we're saying, and we've talked to a lot of people who handle clinical trials in America.
Yeah.
To a person, they would agree that we don't do it efficiently. that we don't do it at the speed that we should be able to do it and still be, to your point, reliable and understand side effects.
Yeah,
And AI, by the way, is a big piece of this.
right.
And we're not utilizing AI in trials the way we should be utilizing it because we're stuck in a system that doesn't like change. And people who've been around for a long time who do things the way they do things. Well, when it comes to people dying and suffering, we should be open-minded to doing things in a futuristic way and a way that can speed the process on behalf of patients in this country.
So when you talked about cures a lot, but you're also going to be doing stuff with prevention, and prevention doesn't necessarily involve medication. Prevention may involve interventions at the population level, which are really hard sometimes to implement and get the effects you want. So are you going to be working in the preventive realm, dealing with things that aren't medication?
So yes, and there's all kinds of things that we can do to prevent people from getting certain diseases. And we read about this all the time. Obviously, what RFK Jr. is doing relative to foods, it's not something that's going to end disease, but will it be effective in preventing certain people from getting a disease that they might have gotten otherwise? Yes. I mean, that's a positive step. The same thing with toxins. There's many more things that we should be doing. If you look at the issue with food around the world, there are many countries that have been doing this for decades. And yes, it prevents a certain number of people from getting disease, but it doesn't cure disease. It doesn't end disease. So if you think about having the money and the right business structure to come up with the answers in the real world, in real time, including with AI and data, to both preventing people from getting sick and then curing them if they get sick, that's what we're all about. We're saying this is the future of handling this issue, but it's got to be done in a business-like way and with accountability.
And the FDA would stay the same and you would just work with the FDA?
So our thought process is that many of the governmental agencies, including the NIH, including the FDA, that they're including the whole clinical trials process, that there are ways, given what our business model is, that we can work collaboratively and get things done in a much more business-like manner. And so I think that ultimately there will be some changes in the FDA. There will be, but changes that are appropriate. But we do not think for a minute that we're replacing the FDA or the NIH or anything else. We want to work collaboratively with them to have better solutions for patients in this country.
So let's say you start today. What disease do you think we can cure in 10 years? This is this is an opinion question. I'm just curious.
Well, first of all, our model is a 6-year model for all diseases.
6 years?
It's 6 year, not 10 years, number one. Number two, I'd say the most likely to get done first is diabetes. However, what I would say to you is we really don't know because we've never handled things the right way in this country. And so we might outstrip any projections that we have. And on the other hand, it might take longer. We don't know, but at least we'll know we're doing things the right way. At least we'll know that we're putting all the right pieces together. At least we'll know to the point that one of the heads of the healthcare industry said the other day that there's probably cures on shelves around the country, but there's nobody putting the pieces together. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And I'll give you a perfect example of that.
That's sad.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just said that's sad.
It's sad, but it's the reality. In fact, I did an interview with Otis Crawley, and Otis is very well known from Johns Hopkins. And Otis said that 20% of the deaths in America from cancer every year would be eliminated if people just had access in this country to everything that we have available currently. Now that's sad. That's incredibly sad to know. But I'll tell you one other anecdotal story. A very good friend of mine who's a well-known entertainer, I'm not going to mention his name, but you know who he is, was diagnosed 7 years ago with an incurable cancer, a cancer that was felt to be inoperable, nothing could be done. He went to multiple doctors and they told him, get your affairs in order, we have nothing that could help you. He called up a friend of his who was a golfing partner of his, who happened to be a very well-known doctor at one of the largest hospitals in America. And he told him what he had. And he said to him, well, you're going to be fine. He said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I know 2 guys in San Diego that have a cure for the cancer that you have. You're going to have surgery and you're going to be fine. It is now 7 years later. He's totally fine. Almost anybody else in America wouldn't have known about this. And that's part of the sickness we have in America. And that's why you need an American Center for Cures. You need an entity that really knows how to maximize our opportunity to prevent and cure, but to also be able to get that messaging out to everybody.
Right,
So
and I think, too, a system that doesn't just benefit the wealthy and the well-connected, because and we see that with some of the newer drugs out on the market, right? Like sometimes they can increase disparities because the people who are broke or who, they don't have much, they don't have access, and then the wealthy people get the access. So can you assure that that won't happen using your?
Well, that's why I told you earlier in this broadcast that that's an extraordinarily important thing to us. And in our model, every American will have access to this and free. This almost sounds like a New York mayoral speech, but
well, free sounds good, but as my mother says, there's no free lunch, so you're going to have to maybe sell that a little better.
But here there is a free lunch because of the amount of money that the federal government saves, and that the budget and the deficit is dropped over time from the work we're doing, enables us to be able to do that. Yeah.
Well, and also sickness just cost us in so many different ways, lost work days, there's just so many different avenues that people don't travel, right? Like it's just, you can get really into the nitty gritty of how much does it cost us to be sick. So let's talk about criticism. Someone comes to you and says, nah, this is high risk, low accountability. You're dreaming, this is not going to work, but in a nice way. What would you say? What would you say to that person?
What I would say to you is that used to be the comment from people. Let's try it with one disease. How do we know this is going to work? The typical reaction that people have to being negative. This time around, and I will tell you, it's because of what Donald Trump did. When he cut funding for research, he made the entire community look at things differently and understand that they had to be much more results oriented, much more connected, much more business-like. And this time around, leaders of the industry are calling me. I was always calling them. They're calling me and saying, you know what, this makes all the sense in the world. And I'm talking about the top doctors in America. I'm talking about the truly enlightened people in this country in healthcare, that they are mobilizing behind this idea for the first time. This idea has been around for a while, but Donald Trump's move made them understand that if you want a lot of money to get the job done, you better have a business-like approach. You better have a target. You better have a time frame. You're going to be accountable. You're going to be responsible. And if you don't get the job done, you're going to be fired. In healthcare today, but I'm serious about that.
I know.
But I'm good with it, because there hasn't been that accountability in the world of prevention and cures. There just hasn't been.
Okay.
Think about just think about it this way. In our current system, if we don't cure a disease in the next 30 years, name me one person that will lose their job. Nobody.
No one.
Nobody. Now, is that the way to get things done? I don't think so. I don't think so. So
Wow. Okay.
the recognition,
Okay.
yeah, the recognition that we needed a new system, and let's stop talking on the nightly news of how close we are to a cure for something. Let's put a process together that will accommodate that and make sense from a business perspective, that people can count on at least maximizing our opportunity. To your point, can we promise anything? We can't promise because we've never done anything like this before. But logically, should we be successful? We cured polio 65, 70 years ago without any of the tools we have today. Now, do you think if the head of Apple was in charge of diabetes, that you'd feel pretty good if you gave him enough money that he'd be able to figure it out? I'd feel pretty good about that. Do I think if I gave Jeff Bezos enough money to get rid of Alzheimer's, that I'd feel pretty good about his ability from a business perspective to put the pieces together and execute? I feel pretty good about that. We don't have that.
Because of his business acumen.
Yeah.
But what about his medical knowledge?
And by the way, I ran a public company. People that run public companies are accountable and responsible. If they don't make their numbers each quarter or over the years, their employees get hurt, their shareholders get hurt. They're accountable, responsible, they have pressure. And if they don't get the job done, you get fired. Your board fires you. Well, that doesn't exist in prevention and cures, but it ought to. And that's what we're going to bring to the table.
And you're meeting with the president to discuss?
We don't have a date yet. We're working on getting to meet with the president. I believe it'll happen shortly. And I further believe that he'll totally get this and embrace it.
Well, he's a business guy, so.
No question. And he's a visionary and he's willing to cross lines. And for something like this, you need somebody like that.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's not going to care about collateral damage. He's going to look at what the goal is and what we haven't got done that we should have got done. And he's going to want to be the kind of guy that gets that done. And frankly, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We should take, instead of the people on both sides fighting with each other, we should take the strengths of people from both parties and work together around their strengths to do things on behalf of the American public. This president's strength in terms of being visionary and willing to try things that make sense is a great asset for us. And the Democrats should work hand in hand with him on cures, because it's the same thing for every Democrat as for every Republican.
Well, I think healthcare is an issue that people can kind of come together on. I mean, everybody wants cures, everyone wants, prevention that works. Nobody can, I mean, the system we have now is just not sustainable. Like, people are we're going to be bankrupt, so we have to try something new.
Well, that's why I say it's the only 100% issue out there.
Yeah.
And that's a very important thing to understand.
It is. I agree with you. So what drives, you've done a lot. You've done the Giving Back Fund. You were an advisor to Clinton.
I was the head of the Jefferson Trust for Bill Clinton, which was the largest donors in America.
Okay. So does something drive you personally to do this now, or is it just
Well, I've been doing this. I've been doing it working on this for 25 years. So it's not now. We had a bill in Congress, a bipartisan bill in Congress that was co-sponsored by Joe Lieberman, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, Thad Cochran, and Tom Carper, who's still in Congress, over 20 years ago. But the time wasn't right. The time wasn't right. The time is right today. And mainly because AI plays a big part in that, the likelihood of success because of AI, because of data, And because of the accumulated knowledge since then, over 25 years, and the failure that we've had in 25 years, gets people to understand that we haven't gotten the job done and we need to do something different and visionary and do something that can bring the entire country together. And I think this will heal the country both physically, but also politically and spiritually at the same time.
Politically and spiritually. Oh, I think you're the first one who mentioned spiritually on here. That's good. It's a good thing. I always say like physical, mental, and spiritual, whatever that means to people.
Well, the country clearly, for anybody whose eyes are open, needs to have something that's unifying and something that we can all agree on. There's very little that we all agree on today. Yeah. This is something that we can all agree on.
Yes, I will agree with you, and I think the timing is right to launch it. So hopefully you get a meeting with the president, and hopefully it goes well. Let's say it launches tomorrow. What's your dream headline 6 years from now? I originally wrote 5, but since you told me 6 earlier.
The dream headline 6 years from now is how many diseases we've prevented and cured, how many lives we've changed, how we've given hope to the hopeless, how everybody in America would know that we've done everything possible to deal with whatever they're faced with. That's what we're looking to accomplish. We want to be aspirational to people and get people to work together around things that we can all agree on. And this is something we can all agree on.
Okay. So American Center for Cures, do you have a website or anything people can go to?
Yes, there's the American Center for Cures.org. But there's a lot of things on that you can get online, just a lot of information. People are posting every day. A lot of celebrities are going to be starting to talk about this in the upcoming days. And there's plenty of things on YouTube as well, by the way.
So you have like a big publicity push, sounds like.
I wouldn't say it was a big push because we understand that the only thing that gets us there is President of the United States. That's the one meeting that matters. When you are trying to be successful in business or anything else, you have to recognize who your customer is. We only have one customer here.
President Trump.
President Trump is our only client.
Okay, so maybe I should email him this podcast, see if he listens to it.
Go for it. Go for it.
Lou, thank you for your time. I really I appreciate learning about this, and I think it would be great if you can get it off the ground. I wish you a lot of luck with it.
And the only thing I would say, Aaron, is I wouldn't say if you can get it off the ground. I would say if we can get it off the ground, because this really is going to be something that takes public demand. And so you and your friends and people you know getting behind it, and it's not financial, just getting behind it, just publicizing it and talking about it goes a long way.
Okay, I can promise you that I will do that.
Well, you got a deal. I believe you.
Sorry, like there's like a construction thing going on underneath, and I feel the whole thing, my whole room is shaking now. I don't know if you could hear that. Sorry to our listeners if you can hear that, but it's only so much.
Well, that's just because our effort is going to shake the earth. That's okay.
It was planned.
I didn't want to tell you, but
you can't escape that in New York City. And okay, to our listeners, thank you so much. And there is an opinion piece on the American Centers for Cures on TrialSiteNews.com, and I'm sure that we'll be covering it more as more comes out about it. And thank you so much, Lou, and to our subscribers. I hope check out TrialSiteNews.com and do subscribe to the podcast. Wow, and the earth-shaking noises are still coming. Way to go, Lou. That was great. Great addition.
I hope it was so much fun. You're a great interviewer and very easy to talk to.